Do we have like the everybody Russian speaking or somebody English speaking? So I know I'm talking to. Who's English speaking? Good, great. Right. So we will start and a small intro: who I am, what we do, what's going to be in this talk, and what it's all about. But before that, just nice small intro. Does anybody of you know the term below the API? It's actually not related to any programming or product development. Nobody? Okay, so that's the term that recently appeared, probably most likely because of Uber appearing and driving their business model. So what's the below the API? If you know what the Uber is, it's the service that allows you to call taxi in lots of Western countries, US, around the US, Europe. So what they do is you just take your phone out of the pocket, you press the button, call a taxi, and here the car arrives. There is almost no people except the driver in the car. There's nobody at the back end who's taking your call or processing it somehow. It's all done automatically. So what happens? Basically, there is the Uber service, like their backend, their system. You may call it the API level because you can reach to it using external API that they provide. And what happens? The driver in the car happens to be below it because there's some executives of Uber at the top. There are some people who are doing checks on drivers, etc. There is client, there is API layer, and there are drivers. So what happens, these drivers quite often don't have any feedback except those that are provided by customers through the app. So it's like you appear to be below some line and nobody in person can tell you whether you're doing good, you're doing bad, which way you should evolve. It's absolutely up to you. And possibly this may even mean that in the future, this below the API level will be absolutely automatic. It may be robotic, kind of robot or self-driving car in case of Uber, but it doesn't really matter. It means that there's something that can replace this level. I really don't know what those people that are in this level they're thinking of, but it sometimes might be a little bit depressing when you're below this API. And the story starts a little bit about Uber and the things. Uber is trying to change the things globally. They try to change the things, how the things are done in the world, how the old-fashioned industries are done, in a ways when it basically throws out some parts that were used before. So like you had a job before, you were in a call with customers, but after companies like Uber appear, you lost your job. So some people may assume, well, that's bad because I lost a job, I cannot earn money, that's the end of my life. Some see it just an opportunity because they have more time to do other things. They can learn, get to study something new and do other things, which is pretty exciting. So what I'm going to be talking today, this was just a small intro. It's mainly our experience of like 10 plus years of doing software engineering as a consulting company, mainly in the mobile space. And like a couple of questions, the barriers that stop us in terms of making changes, what prevents us, what stop us mentally, not just organizationally. The things like, what if you come to a point when you actually need to change a business model, whether it's your own business model or it's a business model of your partner company that you're working for as a consultant. Education things, how education is important in terms of provoking these changes and how this can help you. And also the things like contracts and papers, which is quite a thing that's not liked in some part of Agile world, but this can really help in provoking changes. And first about us. So who we are, what Standfy is. So we're the software design and development studio who builds mobile and wearable, mainly apps. We're right now focusing on a different new innovative technologies, but mobile still is our main area. We're 6 years in mobile and more than 10 years in software engineering, and we're building from the small student group into the company was right now more than 20 people. We're much bigger than that. We went back to 20 plus, but I'll tell you about the reasons and why that happened. Hopefully this might be a good example for you. And we've done a number of good projects that we're really proud about. Some of them has millions of users in the apps and are really worth looking at. So I hope my experience would be kind of any benefit to you. Among the customers, lots of startups that I work with. Right now, they're mainly startups in the Silicon Valley that are on the top edge of the technology, and we're trying to challenge that technology together with them, challenge this world, so we know a little bit about what it means to be at that edge. And we also had corporate customers, which are pretty different from the small startup world. You know, there's big, bulky companies that are very slow in things. They have lots of papers and other stuff inside before you can do anything. And there are still success stories. Among the stuff that we do, and right now that's how it looks like, what the type of things it's like. UI UX design with lots of analysis. It's the iterative development with lots of Scrum. But it wasn't always like that. It was much different, and I will explain how it was and how it changed and our reasons for that. But before that, like a couple of days ago, probably weeks, I came up a nice article of my colleague, ex-colleague online, and she was basically summarizing some nice articles, and she has this image which is a summary from the 8th annual State of Agile survey. So what it says like 53% of all participants of this survey claimed that they were unable to change because they're unable to change. They just don't want to change because of the culture that they have inside. It doesn't change. 42% also mentioned that there is resistance to change. So obviously, we're talking not just about some organizational points, but it looks like the things that are here. Because the biggest barrier in terms of changes, what psychology tells us, is actually inside here. That's what stops us. And the reason for that is very simple. If you go like back to about a million years ago, like, you know, when our ancestors were probably sitting on trees and eating bananas. I know bananas were the days, but still. If you have bananas on your trees and you see seem to be enough bananas for me to go for a while, why should I look for another tree or for another fruit if it's already here? Why do I need to change? That's simple as that. So it's all here. And the other problem these days is, and those days, is basically that we're afraid of uncertainty, because if you climb down the tree, you're in front of other creatures, animals that might eat you. And the same happens in our business. If you're trying to change something, it's basically you're doing some risk, and this risk might kill you sometimes not, but this is something that stops us into doing changes. So I want to tell our story in terms what was our journey, and then lead to some factors that we found are useful and might help you, hopefully, provoke the changes and actually allow you to do these changes much easier. So in the early days, like 9 years ago, we're a small group of enthusiast engineers that were like, you know, the first days of doing business. We heard that these big companies are doing all this, you know, writing specs, they're writing this nice fixed price contracts. Well, because they're the first days, okay, they say you need to sign the fixed price contract. Okay, we sign it because we want a job. So we're doing that. We're writing specs because we wanted to know, okay, if we sign a contract, how do we match the obligations and the requirements that are set in that contract? So we're doing all of that. We had like throughout the years, a couple of managers, then it started in more than couple, several more. So we had, a pile of managers inside. And we were not that big. We're like, 50 people. For 50 people having like, 6 managers inside a company might sound a little bit strange, but that's how it was. So I found myself sitting at the desk and thinking, okay, there is a problem with that one over there. There is a problem over there. And it's like, it was all going into mind, just blocking me from doing anything. So we came to a point when it was just annoying. We didn't like what we do. You're basically battling all the time the obligations you have in a contract. You're battling the way how your customer is seeing how it should be. You're battling with your own people because they tend to probably not deliver the proper quality, or you think it's not a proper quality, but there is other point of view among them. And we decided we don't want to do that business. Either we stop and shut it down, or we change something. We knew already about the nicer things that existed in the agile world, and we thought we were agile actually. By doing all of that, we thought we were agile, and it continued up to the point. So we decided, okay, let's do change. Let's change our teams. Let's change the approach, how we actually communicate with our customers. Basically, let's change everything. But what do we need? We need to see what people we have in the team, like whether those people that we have already, do they perform well and they deliver the quality? Should we continue with them? And we actually had to fire some of them. We were 50 people right now. We're just 20 plus, and I would say we're very happy. We had to fire some customers. Some customers left due to changes. But basically, that's what happened because we said, okay, we're not going to go the way you want. And they said, well, then we're not going. So that was the point. So we lost some customers. We had to fire people. It was kind of really hard, tough period that we had to overcome. And basically almost changed our business model, the approach, and I will describe in what way. And right now, I would say, I can describe what we're doing internally, how it all looks like. We're applying lots of practices from Scrum. We're doing lots of lean stuff with our customers, and we're practicing XP practices among the engineering teams, which I found is very exciting and very interesting for me personally, and the feedback I get from all the people in the company, which is really nice, so I'm happy. But it wasn't like this in the beginning. And that's what I'm trying to show to you. And next, I'm going to be showing what were the things that we changed or the moments that we used and helped us on this way. Some of you who'll be sitting here might be saying, okay, but you're coming from a consultancy world, companies that comes into, I'm already in some structure, we're building this product. This is quite a different situation. Your practice will not apply easily to our case. Well, that's not really the case. Because sometimes if you're inside, it just gives you more opportunity into changing than when you're outside. Actually, right now, after listening the keynote at the main stage where Craig was telling about this, all big companies and how this work, I realized that's also not always true. And you might be true in terms that changing from inside is hard, and sometimes bringing someone from the outside who's an expert in the industry might benefit you. But these are a little bit different stories, cases that you can apply, and use in your real life. So a lot depends in changes in order to change on your own will, right? Whether you're coming from the outside or you're coming from the inside. If you don't want to change, nothing will happen. So what might help you? What might help your will? That's what we found in our own experiences. It's pretty trivial sometimes. Stupid things, but stupid things that work are not stupid. So the simple thing like saying no. What we found out working with our customers, that sometimes they come to us and say, okay, we want to do this nicest app. We have this great idea. It will work this way. We'll write this bunch of features. We'll ship it to the market, and etc. etc. But when you ask them, okay, but how you're gonna earn your money? Do you have any business models? Oh yeah, we have thought about a couple of things, and that's probably will be how it is. Okay. Have you shown your concept or your idea to anybody in your user group? Say, well, we didn't do that, but we know for sure that it works. It works for sure. Okay, maybe, but the practices around the world says that the thing that you think might work is only a hypothesis. And in order to test your hypothesis, you need to show it to your people, to people who'll be using it, your users. And, but these customers often come back, okay, yes, that's good. Let's focus, we will show it. But do you want to spend a fortune of money in order to invest in your product? Then show it to your users and then realize it wasn't worth that. Because users might say, well, we don't need what you've built, or most of the things you did is not worth that. So maybe let's build something small. Yes, let's build something small. Good. There is an agreement. We're moving forward, and there is more and more features coming. They're trying to push in more. And it's an important point to say no. And I really find probably that's one of the most complicated and the simplest thing we can do in terms of changes, saying no. Because if you stop someone from doing these things by just saying no, it may save a lot of your time, a lot of your resources of your company, and really keep you focused. And no, in our case, sometimes saves and makes just a lot of change. Apart from any other factors, any other changes that we're trying to introduce, a simple no may do just huge influence. About the setting rules. So if you want somebody to kind of come to you and work along the practices you already know works good, it's worth setting these rules in the beginning. So let's see the example. Normally, how the story happens. There's you. Let's say you're doing some consultancy. There's somebody coming. Okay, I know you're a great guy in this industry, and you have a great team, and let's do the thing. Okay, yeah, where you're signing contract. Contract is pretty flexible. It doesn't, put any obligations on you. But the next time what you realize is when you're trying to do anything, is no, we don't want to do that, or we don't have time. No, we don't have time for this. We need this one instead. So in order to avoid those things, try to set the obligations in the beginning. So that's also what we're trying to do. We're basically taking the customers, okay, and telling them, okay, before we start working with you, here is what your obligations are. Here is what you need to do in order to work with us. If you don't want to do that, or you don't have the will, the ability, time, whatever, we won't work with you. So one of the hardest challenges in our case, because we're mainly doing rather small projects in terms of size. Well, sometimes they're big, but most of them are pretty small. The biggest challenge we found is actually bringing the person on the business side and joining the team and playing the role as a product owner, bringing in knowledge into the team. So we decided, okay, let's then actually tell that person what he has to do. Because normally if we look into the Scrum framework, and that's the practices that work pretty well, and we found them working for us well, there are certain things that you would like your product owner to do, like, working with backlog, helping clarify all the different details of things. And without that person, it's basically impossible. We tried things like proxying our customers, like creating a proxy product owners and stuff. And it just doesn't work well. Sometimes it does, but normally it does not. So what we tend to do is we tend to actually tell our product owners, okay, you have a set of responsibilities, like, being on a meeting with teams, working with backlog will help you, but you have to do that. The opposite way is actually telling out, expressing what the responsibilities of your team are. Like, okay, you're going to be working with the backlog, but we're responsible for shipping a high quality product. We'll be doing like this planning meetings, we're discussing together with you. There might be questions coming from us throughout the week. Are you ready for that? And at the end, we'll show you, the real working build at the end of the iteration. Does it sound fine? Okay. It really solves a lot of our problems in terms of negotiations, because the further you bring these questions along the process, the harder it is to implement them. I had customers when, in the beginning, after doing this small kind of, I call it a training call or training meeting, the process of working was just way, way easier. I was not wasting time on each, call or meeting or email telling my customers what to do. I just, spend time in the beginning telling them what you expect from them. The other thing is educate. And what I mean by this is when there's somebody coming to you and telling, okay, we're doing this great thing, normally, and I also was in this position, we would assume that person knows everything about how the business is done, how the strategy is built, what needs to be inside and what's not. Well, the reality that we found, it's not like that. The people that come from business, they are not always know about the best way how to achieve the goals that they're trying to achieve. And that's where our role and your role is into showing them, that this is right. Or if you're in the business side, then there is a team that actually can give valuable input. What I mean by this, we work with many different startups in Silicon Valley, and this is probably the region where all the most recent trends and technologies appear. And people are quite well known about the things. So they know about Lean, they know about Scrum, they know this, they heard about it at least. But when they're starting to do their own thing, it appears that, okay, there is Lean, but we'll do it our own way. All those guys that practice Lean and have the nice practices, well, they do it good, okay, but we'll do it our own way. And sometimes it's really worth explaining them why this matters, because they might not know all the details, what benefits it might bring to them, whether it's Lean or Scrum or whatever you're doing, it may be your own process or your own practices, explaining it and also telling them the reasons how it's better to do, explaining the better way. So the education, as long as just simple instruction, is just a great way of moving things forward. Educate your customers, educate your managers if you're in a company, tell them about the better ways. Of course, there might be cases, and we found them that you're showing this, it just doesn't work, or person's not reacting. Well, you always have a choice. The last choice you can make is actually stay or leave. And I hope that people who are sitting in this auditorium are actually not afraid of doing this. There is one last slide that I will show at the end that will explain and hopefully will break one mental barrier in your mind in order to avoid this block of being afraid. But moving forward. So I mentioned a little bit about contracts. There is a nice thing in Agile Manifesto, customer collaboration or contract negotiation, which many people treat in a little bit different way. They tend to read it not over, but instead of, as other Agile principles, actually. But Agile Manifesto actually doesn't say that. It doesn't say that the contracts are bad, or documents are bad, or any other thing is bad. They're just saying that there are things that value more, and you can benefit more out of those things. And we found that actually contracts and things like documents and things can help you. So let's take the example. When you set some basic rules in your contract, it can change the picture dramatically. How many of you have had a situation when you had a negotiation in the beginning of something, you were about to send a contract or sign an agreement, you send that agreement, and there is a pile of questions appearing from the other side? Have you ever had that story? Can you raise a hand who has that? Okay, please, somebody. So basically, contract is a thing that raises questions. That's kind of a similar as when I'm in a consultancy and I send the invoice. There are straight ahead many of questions appear. Whoa, what we did? And that's what happened with us in the early days where we're not practicing, when we were more in a waterfall world. So the customers were coming to us, whoa, this invoice, but what's happened, what we're paying for. So invoices or contracts is a good point to actually raise or activate the mind on the other side. If you're putting something in your contract, then this can be just basic rules of how you're going to work. It may be the responsibilities of the other side. It may be some kind of a basic obligations. I'm not saying about putting the whole world in that contract, but just the basic stuff about what you expect from the other side. This must just change a lot, because as soon as they're going to put the signature under that damn picture, that paper, they will read it. Even if you had 5 or 10 calls explaining the same thing, having just a small paragraph summarizing all of that in your contract may just change a lot. Or even sometimes with all these different things, I'm not saying the contracts, but you can actually influence the way how business is done on the other side. So what I mean by that, normally you're building something together either with a business person. If you're a consultancy, then there is someone coming from the business world and you're building a product together. If you're inside the company, then there is a whole team and there's someone making decisions a little bit higher, but you're building it together. If you're setting those rules and showing the better ways to go, it sometimes may change how this business is done. Sometimes these ways are really easy to do. You can just show, okay, there's good practices in the market. There's Lean, and Lean says that you need to ship fast, get the feedback, and incorporate it in your product, and iterate. And it really fits what we're trying to achieve, because we don't know whether it will work or not. It's good if the person in front of you will tell you, well, or yes, let's go. That's the most exciting way. If it happens, well, it happened probably several times among of many others in our experience. And the other ways we had actually to push a lot in terms of provoking people to make changes. So what I'm trying to say is, if you're able to explain an argument, that's great. But also you should remember, don't be afraid of be hard. If you're saying no, I don't want, or because of this, it's not a good way, it's also another nice tactic. Just don't be afraid to do that. You're losing basically not much. If the person in front of you really is not agreed and you see that it's right because you know it from your own experience, well, you might leave the company. Yes, that's the worst case, or in my case, I can lose a contract. But if I see that things are going the wrong way, then maybe losing that contract is not a so bad idea. I might find someone else who I'll be working with and utilizing this much nicer opportunity. And probably one of the last things I would like to mention, and this is a good lesson from the kind of different negotiation practices. If you have any need in your mind or any need that's sitting behind you, waiting for something, then you're weak. Because you probably will be thinking about this need that's, that you have over here, and that will block you from saying no or just, we should do it differently. Because you'll be interested into actually getting that need. And normally, as soon as you have this need, the person in front of you will feel it and will use it. So if you will throw away this need out of your head, or at least make it less important, that would really help. This helps us in terms of signing contracts or getting the agreement with our customers, because we realize, okay, if we're not getting that contract because they're not agree of doing things differently, then I'll just go and find someone else who will be doing that. And I hope this lesson will help you in your life. The other story about mental barriers that's in your head. How many of you are actually kind of a C-level or executive level who's making decisions in business? Okay. Who has a manager about yourself? Well, more. Right. So what I was saying, if you have this, right, sorry. Just 1 minute. The idea, it's coming in the head. Right. It's good if if you have someone you're working in a business and executive level, and imagine a situation, right? Imagine a situation if you would be running your own small business, right? And you're about to sign a really good and nice contract. You agreed with other business owner that everything, the conditions are fine. You're ready to go on, and the next comes your lawyer or accountant and says, well, the thing that you agreed that actually not aligned with the best practices in the law world, and we have to change phrases. We need to add a spec here, SOV, and a couple of statements, and basically this would break the agreement. What would you do? Would you listen to the actually lawyer and change the way how it's all done, or you're trying to find the other way? In my experience, this was probably one of the points when I realized the things like accounting, lawyers, etc. It doesn't make your business or it doesn't make your work done. It's you who defines the way how things are done, and you identify which way to go. So if somebody comes and tell you, okay, well, you shouldn't do this because people used to do the other way, maybe it's not worth listening and actually follow your own path, but just use common sense. Well, that's basically it. What I was trying to tell you from our own experience, and I would appreciate if you have any other questions I can help you with. Yep.
You told a lot about how to change people, how to change minds inside heads of people who are your customers, but how to change people that you are working together with. If you are the team, you work with them, but they are not able to change their mind, and they are not going to support your ideas, to support your trying to change them. How to? I cannot say anything bad words to them because they are my team, not my family, but my team. How should I communicate with them to make them to change themselves with me?
Okay. So in our experience, we've went several different ways. Kind of the way number one, and I call it the radical way. If you see that person's not changing like for a long time and just it's not able to accept changes, it's either the wrong person to work with, or you have to solve. Well, that's the radical way. Yeah. Obviously, the easiest one is trying to persuade or show the better way. So what we found in our own teams, the teams of engineers, when we started practicing like different XP practices like pair program, code reviews, and other things, it helps to show the other person the different way of doing things. So, for example, let's take the pair program. You sit next to each other, and let's imagine you have somebody next to you who's doing something differently, completely different to how you do it. It may be code, it may be design, I don't know, or even writing some statements, contracts, or whatever. So what we tend to do in our engineering pairs is they used to, well, it's like the common pair program, they tend to switch time intervals, and they do it on the same computer. So basically, there is an interval when one person's doing thing, another one's following and giving ideas or challenging the reasons that the person has had. And the next moment when the interval finishes, the other person steps in. And basically, you have to follow the line, otherwise you lose it. And you have to then continue what was at the point. But by doing things together, like in pair, that's what we found for engineers, sometimes work very good because you can show how you do, with a simple things like text editing. Because somebody can do it very, very slowly and it just annoys you, like you're angry. You see like someone is tapping like, button and button, and you can do hundreds of those for the same time. So we tend to practice it from time to time. I can't say we're doing it, frequently or, on everyday basis, but I know companies like Pivotal Labs who have the pair program like constantly. They have the pair design, like also the constant thing. And they're one of the consultancy companies that I can tell are really scalable. Because in most, this consultancy outsourcing businesses, they're not very well scaled while keeping the same quality level. In their case, it works pretty well. You're welcome. Yes, please.
If you're not a consultancy company, but a product development company, and you have a customer, and he is very attractive customer, you agree on budget and skills and everything, and he's a new customer, how to show them that there is a better way and provoke them to change, to agree on these rules, to have training calls and document these basic rules, and not lose them, not make them choose someone who is perhaps not as effective as you would be, but works in a more familiar way for them.
Mm-hmm. And by saying customer, what customer do you mean? Is it kind of a corporate customer or just mass market user? More corporate. Okay, so basically, well, it's actually your end user who will be using your product, but it's not that far away from my reality in consultancy, because in your case, you're selling the real actual physical software product. I'm selling the services of creating that product. So just the type of product is different. You're still signing a contract. If you don't want to lose it and the person is strictly against whatever you're proposing, well, I would advise you to really think well about whether you want to work with him. Because if that person is completely against whatever you're doing, he might just harm the way and philosophy you're following. If that's all your market like it is, then maybe it's for you time to change. But if it's the only single person or several people that you faced, and there are others that are different or ready to comply with you, maybe it's worse to actually find someone else. But still, there's lots of ways how to try to lay out the arguments in terms of if you know your competitors, and obviously you should know them, you can argument their their pluses, what they have, and show that you're better, and the way how you do things is better. Well, I've from my experience, that's probably the only way if you want to keep someone, the person, it's through the reasoning, keep them. Because the hard way of changing is normally would provoke some conflict further. If you won't have this conflict right now, it might appear further on your way. You're welcome. Yes, please.
Mentioned that the contract helps actually, and contract can help you with negotiations or after you started with the client, right? And in your experience, how many times it came to the point when you have to sit with your client and review all these clauses, I would say?
Each time.
Each time.
Each time it happens when you send the contract, you talked before, you send the contract, and there's, a number of comments. Mm-hmm. They are different. All the time they are different because...
Yeah, okay. I mean, actually, after you started with the client, and when you meet some problem or your client doesn't understand any or something that you would like to change, and you have to sit with him again and review the contract points that you agreed on.
You mean afterwards along the way? Well, that happened for me very rarely, maybe once or twice. Normally, I use that example as a starting point in terms of raising attention, activating the points and brains in order for a person to understand what you're trying to do, which way you're trying to do. So afterwards, along the way, I really only had it a couple of times when it was pretty bad. When the situation was really we were going some really serious misconception with other party. But in most cases, it worked for me, as I said in the beginning, just to raise the attention, show that's the way how it should be done.
Do you think this, when you have to come back to the contract review, is a last point or some warning that the work is not going like you want it to do?
Well, normally people will not go to contract and lawyers unless it's pretty bad. You're welcome. Any more questions? Well, it seems like we don't have. Well, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your questions.